We are going to start. Good morning. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Today we are going to have a different session with the international vision by our expert, Chris Crowley. After this speech, we will have time for some questions, so you can use this chat for this. And now, well, I leave you with Oscar to introduce Chris, and they will start with the interview. I hope you enjoy.
Good morning, everybody. First of all, we need to appreciate and thank all our sponsors. Thanks to them in this period of time, especially in this period of time, we are capable to run these webinars. The majority of them have been supporting us for these 10 years. Foreign Business Travel have been doing business for 10 years, and the majority, the sponsors support us, and this is how we run our business. As Natalia said, today we are going something different. We have plans to expert, but finally we have Chris. I know Chris for a long time, and today we are going to have an interview just to share one of the deep knowledge about international business travel. And from that point, just introduce Chris, and just 1 minute. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Oscar. How are you?
Okay. Please introduce yourself, your background, 3 minutes of your experience in business travel.
Yeah, Oscar, thank you very much. And it's lovely to see you again. For those in the audience that don't know, Oscar and I have a history of working together many years ago in my time at BCD. I think it's more than 10 years now, Oscar, which probably neither of us would like to admit too much. But I have a background in law, in hotels, in TMT, and for the last few years, I've been a consultant with the firm Nina Pinta, where I'm a partner. I was on an engagement with HRS, the hotel specialist, for quite a long time. And at the moment, I am primarily engaged in sourcing and engagement consultancy with a number of US companies, mainly in the entertainment sector. So my primary client at the moment is Universal Music Group, but I'm also doing work with Sony and with Time Warner. I'm very active in the UK Travel Association, where I'm the treasurer and on the board. And we've just finished our annual conference, which we held virtually this year with almost 1,000 attendees, which was a fantastic moment for the UK market. I'm thrilled to be able to be with you today. Thank you so much for the chance to talk together. I hope I can share some interesting insights for you, and I'm really looking forward to your questions and your feedback.
Thank you, Chris. The first question is the 5 key changes in the business travel. When we move into the next step, you have a long experience. What are these 5 changes?
Well, I think there's a number of changes that are both tactical and strategic. And let me maybe address the most strategic change that I think we will see in the way that we work. We have for 30 or 40 years in business travel worked in a very, what the Americans call a stage gate process. We have linear processes. We do one thing after another. We do them in order. We have a set of supply chains and ways of working that are following a path from A to B to C to D to E to F. It drives us all crazy sometimes because things can be very slow or difficult to implement or to do. But this way of working will not survive COVID. What we will see now are companies being very successful who are able to be very agile. They can focus on specific strategic opportunities quickly. They can work fast. They have teams that are very flexible. They're able to address issues in different markets and in different areas of the value chain quickly and intelligently. See a whole different way of working that allows more flexibility and the ability to respond to a changing marketplace, a fast changing marketplace. We know the return from COVID will be inconsistent across countries. Different countries will come back at different speeds, at different times, in different ways, with different segments. We had the fantastic news from Roche this morning about the antibody tests being developed, which has great hope for all of us, but nonetheless, agile thinking will be important. We also may see a big change now in the way that pricing is handled in our business. Transactional pricing, which was the most common way of doing business prior to the crisis for the travel agencies, in the airline business, in the GDS business, even to a certain extent in the hotel business. Transactional thinking, commodity thinking may no longer be the most dominant model as we move forward. The businesses that have survived well from COVID are the technology businesses that work on enterprise fees or on profile or subscription charging. And I think we will see this coming into the more regular travel space now. The CEO of American Express this week was quoted as saying that they will introduce subscription pricing across 1/3 of their customer base. So I think we will start to see a change in pricing. I think we will see a dramatically reduced capability for at least the first 12 to 18 months in the airline sector. We know that today the major airlines are operating somewhere between 15 to 20% of their routes at around and about 50% capacity, which means that they're operating on around 8% of the pre-COVID numbers. Robert Isom from American Airlines this week was quoted as saying that they expect to bring back a route map that most closely resembles 1965 in the fact that there will be dramatically less routes, there will be less flights. Therefore, we can also expect there to be impacts on our ability to get seats and on cost. The Financial Times, the UK economic newspaper, estimated that the impact of social distancing and the extra cost for the airlines could increase airline ticket prices by as much as 3 times. So we're going to see some big impacts in airline capability. I think we will also see a change in the way that we look at our travel process. There is a saying that really comes from Plato. It says that necessity is the mother of invention. And it is very true to say that during this crisis, we have had to rethink how we do things in our regular world. So much of what we do now is on video conferencing. We have different processes for approvals, for data, for the way that we analyze or we look at things or we communicate. We will not leave all of these things behind. There are lessons that we've learned here. There are things that we do, processes that we use. And I think those things will carry on into the new post-COVID world. So we're going to see changes that have come up because of the crisis will stay with us after the crisis. And one good example is what we're doing now. I think we will continue to do a lot of our internal meetings will continue to be at a minimum video conferencing. So we will see some changes there. So a number of different changes: capability, pricing, way of working, and of course many traveler impacts. But I think we're going to come to the traveler impacts later.
What about the role of the travel manager? Because as well, we have several conversations. Now, travel managers are really driving this situation. And how you see the change in the role of the travel manager?
I think it's a difficult time for travel managers. And there's a couple of things that I think are contributing to that. First of all, internally in many companies, and I'm sure this will resonate with your attendees today, is the change in the stakeholder power in organizations. HR and security will have a different kind of role in the future here. Policy, in particular, policy as it relates to the traveler and the individual, liability, regulation, profile data, all of these things will be a big challenge for the travel manager because they will need to, there will be an extraordinary amount of information that will need to be provided in addition to current data for the traveler. I think also for the travel manager, deal compliance is going to be difficult. You know, we live in a world where we negotiate airline deals, hotel deals. These are all based on volume. They're based upon a marketplace that we remember pre-COVID. I would be very surprised if any of the deals that we have left over from pre-COVID mean anything post-COVID. You know, what does your hotel deal mean really? Who knows? Will you get do you even want the fare that you would have had negotiated on the flight? So I think there's going to be a lot of reassessment of deals, of corporate compliance, stuff like that. I think the other big challenge for the travel manager, and this is probably the most difficult to solve, will be re-establishing traveler confidence. Travelers, a lot of them will not want to get back on airplanes. They simply will not. And this is going to be a big challenge for travel managers and for companies, is to persuade their people to travel again. You know, people will be afraid. They will be afraid to be in an enclosed environment. They'll be afraid to be overseas. They will be afraid to get sick somewhere else. Yeah. This is going to be a big job for travel managers. So I think it's a number of different challenges. Data is going to be difficult as well, getting reliable data that you can use. And there's going to be new data that we will need as well, right? So we're going to need all kinds of data around length of trip, around airports. We're going to need data around delays. We're going to need data around profile requirements. So I think the travel managers are facing some big challenges in getting access to data, defining policy, convincing travelers, and managing stakeholder expectation. These are all big challenges. So I wish you all much success with this in the next few months. It's going to be interesting. Yeah,
yes, it's an opportunity as well. In many companies, travel managers have a logistic role, and this is an opportunity to move into more strategic role. Therefore, I see as well as an opportunity to move in the visibility of any company. You mentioned already some of them, but what are the main challenges that you see in the sector? You mentioned some of them, but do you want to add any other challenge?
I think the first and biggest challenge is going to be managing traveler expectation. We touched on traveler confidence, but I think there is a communication requirement here that is going to be different to where we are today. Today, mostly when we communicate with travelers, or pre-COVID, we've been communicating policy, we've been enforcing policy, we've been asking for what you could call aesthetic feedback on supply. Did you like your hotel room? Was your process okay? Stuff like that. We're now going to have to deal with a communication process that is going to be a lot more aggressive from some of the travelers. They're going to want to know more information about where they're going, what's being done for them, how they can be looked after. So I think communication is going to be one of the big challenges. I think data is going to be a big challenge, getting accurate and reliable data. I think standardization from suppliers is going to be a real challenge for corporate travel. I don't know if the corporate traveler managers in the audience have counted, but I can tell you from customers that we're working with, the volume of surveys coming from suppliers asking about when will your business come back, which markets, how much, you know, it's hundreds of surveys. There's no common standard or thread here. So I think also that makes modeling very difficult. And then I think understanding the different regulations in different countries and the different quarantine, medical history, contact data, all the other stuff that's going to have to be done. So I think there's going to be a lot of challenges. And then I think the other thing that everybody has to be ready for is that we're going to come in and out of this crisis. So we will for sure see lockdowns come back in maybe a very targeted way. And then the final problem is maybe a more geographic one, is America. America is at the end of this cycle, not the beginning of it. Now, most of the things that have happened in the world over the last 50 years, America has been at the beginning of a cycle, whether it's technology, whether it's process, but America is at the end of this cycle. And America represents 40% of the world's global business travel. A large chunk of its revenue. So if that is the last market to come back, that will be like a heavy stone hanging off the boat, slowing down the speed that it can return. And I think we have to be conscious of that as well. So a number of things going on here, and the key to it is going to be staying informed and staying flexible and agile, I think.
I totally agree.
Hi, Clara, by the way. Nice to see you too.
I totally agree. The first point is the mindset. how people have to change the mindset. This is not stable. Any negotiation, any information is not 12 months visible. It's not. It's going to be, I don't know, maybe a month, maybe a couple of weeks. Therefore, it's a mindset of culture of the companies and travel managers have to move and evolve into different environment.
I completely agree. There are some very interesting technology developments that may come through on the back of this. If any of you have time, I would encourage you to look at the website for a company called The Winding Tree in California. The Winding Tree is a public blockchain. This is a public blockchain of travel processes bolted together, which any supplier can link into or any customer can take an API feed from. And I think this is probably where the future is going, that we will see more and more publicly available sets of processes that allow people to do the business that they need to do without having to build another 200 new supplier relationships. Okay. So I think we're going to see a different mindset here. It's going to be flexible, it's going to be agile, and it's going to be more kind of technology enabled in a certain way. And we are going to be even more online than we were before. And that's also another thing, because a lot of service capacity, which was linked to call centers and staff and often physical premises, it's not there anymore. So yeah, I think we're going to have to be ready with that. It was the Winding Tree, Clara.
Yeah. In every webinar, we try to be very practical. And the next question is about what is the advice, what is the 3 best practices that you will recommend for this new environment, with this ecosystem completely different than the past?
Well, my first piece of advice, which probably sounds slightly crazy, is don't do anything too quickly. So there will be a temptation to rush to a new policy, to rush to new deals, to rush to make decisions. Don't. Be very, very interactive in your communication first. So make sure that you have built very, very clear and clean internal stakeholder relationships. Make sure you've got the widest possible set of perspectives internally. Make sure that your senior management are engaged around what you need to do from your travel process. And don't try and make any decisions until you've done that, until you've had the opportunity to review with your stakeholder group your policy today. Try and build a perspective on what's going on in the world and what's happening in terms of a timeline. I can recommend a couple of websites and tools. McKinsey have a very, very good report. It's free. You can download it. Boston Consulting Group, there is a website called Trip, Travel Return Information Portal, I think, something like this. Yeah. It's an excellent resource. There's a number of them that you can access. Once you've got your internal group aligned, put pressure internally on security and HR to work with you on a full policy review and do a complete inventory of all of your deals that you have, your airline deals, your hotel deals, everything else. Then look very carefully with your internal stakeholders at which pieces of your business are coming back first. And your business will be starting to have a plan about what it needs to do. In some cases, the businesses will need to reshape themselves after shutting down from COVID. In some cases, they will want to reopen customer commercial relationships. In some cases, it's just a question of relocating resources or people. In some cases, it will be HR. But try and identify which parts of your business are likely to need to travel first. And
Absolutely.
Then link the inventory of supplier deals you have to those parts of your business. And at that point, if you need to renegotiate, then renegotiate. Make sure you establish, as best you can, an open communication forum for you and your travelers. Give them as much information as you can about what you're doing and why you're doing it. Don't try and keep them in the dark, because that builds fear and it builds resentment, and then you will not have the support for your policy.
Absolutely. I just opened the Boston Consulting is called the Travel Recovery Insights portal, and I put the website into the chat. I think this is good because this is how it's moving the business travel. I put it in the chat just to see people want to click on, because some of them asking for this. You mentioned before how travelers are going to think in a different way, and many travelers say, I don't want to travel. And other travelers will say, yes, I want to get out of my home, because some people like you spend many, many days around the year traveling, and now you are at home. And this is the two sides of the same equation. People really desperate to travel, and people say, no, I'm not willing to do that. How travel friction is going to be affected by COVID-19?
Well, a couple of very interesting points here. First of all, I think this will be generational. So I think the older road warrior type traveler, and unfortunately, Oscar, that includes you and I these days, but the older road warrior type traveler will be quite keen to come back into travel. You know, they are used to their loyalty points, the lounges, the flights, the hotels, the meetings. It's a way of life for many of them. They spend 150 plus days on the road.
Yep.
Suddenly they're confronted with their families who they don't really see normally, and they've been stuck with them for 2 months, and you know, not being able to get out and do all their business. So I think that generation of traveler will be very keen to come back to travel again, actually. But I think what we may see more interestingly is that in Gen Y, Gen Z, we may see some very strong reluctance on certain kinds of travel, where COVID may be used as an argument for trips not to be done. And I'm thinking of high intensity, internal type travel more than anything else. You know, that 5 a.m. flight where you come back at 10 o'clock at night, so you can sit in an internal meeting and have somebody shout at you for 6 hours. We may not get so much interest in doing those trips, right? So I think there's going to be some of that. I think also the sustainability topic is going to come up here with the travelers, because it has not gone unnoticed by everybody that we can hear birds singing, we can see fish in the river, we can, you know, we have an earth that is benefiting from this situation. And I think for some of the younger generations, there will be a conscious thought that they want to try and be more impactful in the right way around what they're doing. COVID is an environmental topic, because it is a topic that has come from man. If we did not have the intensity of our behavior, we would not have had this pandemic. So it is also, therefore, I think for some of the younger generations, a topic like that. So I think there will be elements of that. I think there will be a lot of anxiety in travelers. So again, I go back to the point, communicate, communicate, communicate. Listen to them, talk to them, be informative. You know, there are ways to do this. If there are people like me can help you with this. So, but it's really a question of doing small forums, large chats, town hall type things, some one-to-one discussions, and again, identifying those first responders who will be traveling first and getting them on your side as a kind of test case study that they can talk in positive way is also very important. So I think this is going to be a big moment. We are an industry that needs volumes of people to travel to be successful, and in order to do that, we need to convince our community to travel, not just individuals, but our community. So we have to also be ready to speak as a community. So it's quite important that we are communicating in a number of different ways.
We're about, there is a debate, international debate about when and how it's going to come the travel. Is it going to be leisure? Is it going to be MICE, the business, the events? Is it going to be business travel? What is your point about that? What is the state of that?
Well, first of all, let me just say that I am not from the Harry Potter School of Wizardry, so I don't have any magic crystal ball. But my personal opinion is that the first travel that will come back will be domestic leisure or domestic family travel. My logic behind this is that I think the relaxing of lockdown restrictions will happen in such a way that people will be able to travel to other cities or to other parts of their own country to see family that they've been separated from. We heard from a number of you this morning about family being in other cities. I think that will be probably the first kind of travel that comes back. I think it will come back in the car and on the train sometime before it comes back in the plane. I think we will see European rail coming back relatively quickly. I think sometime in the third quarter, we will start to see that coming back, inter-country European rail. Short-haul regional air travel will come back around the third quarter. We'll start to see some of that materializing, but I would be very surprised if we are back at more than 50% of our pre-COVID volumes by the end of the first quarter 2021. And in general, our forecast is that we will not see more than 70% of air volume return before the end of 2021, perhaps even into second quarter 2022. So, and I think that will be matched by scheduling and capacity. The air travel piece is the hard bit here, and that's the bit that's going to be the most difficult to manage, understand, and convince people of. And again, as we were talking about before the call, this news from Roche that they have the antibody test ready to go out now could be a very big piece of news in the airline business indeed, because if we're able to stamp people's passports and say, I've had coronavirus, then that will make certain elements of travel much, much easier. But we're only just getting to that. So, no, I think it will be domestic leisure first, short-haul regional business second, long-haul business third, long-haul leisure last, I would say.
Okay.
But like I say, I'm not a wizard. I can only give you my view.
Of course, and let's see the development of the different countries as well, because you have to be 15 days as a quarantine to go on holidays. Probably you won't be able to go because the holidays is 1 week. Therefore, it depends as well of the regulation that from governments. If you are capable to go on holidays or just basically it's not possible. And then just finally, this scenario is changing and many companies ask for help from outside. How do you see this, the third parties coming into the business travel world? Do provide support, provide information, provide communication? How do you see this as well from an external point of view?
Well, in our case, I'll give you a personal story about what happened to us. When we began the year in January, we are a business of around 25 or so consultants in 10 countries, 3 continents, and we began the year with around 30 to 40 projects on the books, a very positive looking year indeed. About 1/3 of our business was training at the start of the year. Our biggest training contract was Cathay Pacific. That disappeared in February straight away. And by the end of February, we had 2 contracts left on the books from the 30-something that we had at the beginning. The first month of the month of March was a very difficult month for us indeed. But since then, as businesses have started to think and plan for the return post-COVID, we are now becoming quite busy in a very interesting way. We're doing a lot of work in helping people define policy and helping people identify corporate deal compliance, helping them review their deal inventory. We're doing quite a lot of work in helping people understand what's going on in the marketplace from a strategic perspective, but also from a data perspective. We are doing some work with a couple of companies to do reviews of their technology stacks. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with that phrase, technology stack is the layers of technology that you have in a process to do what you need to do. So if you are a travel management company, then your technology stack includes your back office, your mid office, your GDS, your point of sale, your booking tool, etc. If you're a corporate buyer, then your technology stack includes your expense tool, your online booking tool, your HR approval tool, your communication tool, your CRM, all the rest of it. So we're doing a lot of work with people to help them define the technology stacks in a way that best allows them to communicate. And then we're doing a lot of communication work and engagement work with folks, helping them to organize communication vehicles to work with each other to do things, a lot of things like this as well. And finally, probably the most significant element is that we've been doing quite a lot of work on linking sustainability, duty of care, and policy for the future environment. And I would say to you right now, if anybody here would like to spend some time with us and talk with us, we'd be delighted to offer you some free time, an hour or 2 hours on the phone with a couple of our consultants. If you want to talk through your experiences, it helps us because we learn as much from you as you do from us. So if anybody wants to do that, we'd be delighted to do that.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Many people say that in the future, maybe it's micro meetings. Instead of have 20, 30 people in a room or 300, maybe we won't be able to do that. And the perspective of companies is having micro meetings. Are you seeing this as a possibility? Because you've been in meetings with, I don't know, 100 people. And for the time being, many companies say, we are not allowed to have these kind of meetings. This is a question for you. This is a new question for you.
Well, we're seeing a very interesting trend in California, which is the virtual environment that you now can enter into for meetings with very good technology indeed. So virtual reality headsets, and you find yourself in a meeting space. This is becoming quite popular on the West Coast in the US as a way of getting 20, 30, 40 people into a meeting together. You can do some quite interesting things with it. So that's the first development. Second development that we're seeing in some marketplaces is a lot more outdoor meetings, interestingly, right? Yep. So particularly now in the summer months where you have the opportunity to sit together in an outdoor environment, and you see this also now in the press conferences and some of the briefings that you get. So I think we will see over the summer some more outdoor meetings. I think we will see less internal information meetings. So most companies, about 1/3 of their travel is people basically traveling to each other's departments to tell them what they do. And we've all sat through these meetings. Here's my organizational chart. Here is my team, etc., etc. I think there will be more assessment on the reason for meeting. And then from size of meeting perspective, I don't think we will see large exhibitions or very large conferences for some time. Yep. What we may still see though is small corporate incentive travel, because people will still want to do incentives and thank people. It will just maybe look a bit different. And I think we will still see small strategic meetings happening, just with a lot of careful planning. So I think a little bit the environment, a virtual reality environment will come in. There'll be more outdoor meetings, less big conferences, less trade shows and exhibitions. And I think that's quite an interesting topic, is the trade show and exhibitions, because we all in some way interact with that kind of methodology of selling. But yes, definitely changes there.
Natalia, there are some questions.
By the way, people want
to look at it. Absolutely, I totally agree. There are some questions from the audience. Natalia, go ahead.
Yes, Chris. Clara Sanchez, that you know well, she says, what do you think about the new role of the travel manager? Do you think it will be more complete with a new profile, not only in business travel, in duty of care?
Definitely, duty of care will become a massive part of your role. I think you also will, to a certain extent, need some emotional training in how to deal with your travelers. So if you take the counselor meaning in the more emotive way, I think you're going to be a support resource as much as a policy resource. And I think you will also be a duty of care resource. One of the things you're going to have to think about very carefully is, where do you get your duty of care information from? Because you're going to need to have a way of looking at lots of different countries' information. And you're going to need to think very carefully about what processes you have before somebody is allowed to travel. What do they need to do before they can travel? So yes, duty of care, I think some emotional counseling, more interaction with your HR, and I think you need to be prepared for a lot of communication processes around traveler confidence, which include duty of care knowledge, destination knowledge, some emotional support, stakeholder input. So yes, your roles will expand a lot. You're going to become mama and papa, I think.
Mm-hmm. Okay, there's another question. What do you think about the key points to choose a business travel agency or TMC in the future?
Well, I think you will have an interesting time doing your RFPs in the next year or two. We are running a number of RFPs at the moment for TMCs for customers, and the ability of the TMCs to respond to the RFPs is the first point, because many of their staff are furloughed. Secondly, many of the TMCs have closed physical office premises and furloughed agents. So their ability to bring business back or to service business has changed. Many of them are also in deep financial crisis, and they will be eager and keen to negotiate different kinds of fee models. So expect to get more management fee proposals, probably some subscription fee proposals. I think you will also find that the under the line benefits are less, significantly less. So let's be very open and very honest about the TMC world. The TMCs have survived for many years by having a supply chain relationship that was supported by the GDSs and the airlines. So if you had a transaction fee at 25 euros, the TMC was probably earning another 7 to 15 euros in supplier revenues on top of your transaction fee. Most of those supplier revenues are built around performance against deal compliance for the TMCs. Those payments are simply not going to be there for the next 12 to 18 months. So the TMCs will no longer have a large chunk of that below the line revenue. So how does that impact you in the RFP process? It means that when it comes to them incentivizing you, giving you free services, discounting their pricing very aggressively, it may not be so easy to get the amazing deal that you had before. So you need some patience and some careful thought about how you go about it. If anybody wants some help with this, please do let me know. We have a lot of material we can share, but my strong advice to you is to think now in a more pre-informative way before the pricing process, because I think the pricing process is going to be quite hard now with the TMCs. So maybe think more about doing an RFI for services before you come to pricing. Let them tell you how they would service their business. Be very, very careful about any kind of guarantees that you get from them, and be ready for difficult conversations about volume. Because the way that we would do TMC RFPs before, we'd say, well, here's our volume across all of our countries. None of you can predict your volume for the next 2 years. None of you. Therefore, you're going to have to be really cautious about that. Be really careful about the timelines on your contracts. If they come to you with 2-year agreements, 1-year agreements, be cautious. Be very cautious, because your ability to run processes is also not going to be as good as it was before. But please don't hesitate to reach out on this. This is an area where we do a lot of work, and we'd be very happy to help.
Okay, thank you. There's another question. Chris, what do you think it will be the best strategy to negotiate the hotel program for 2021 in this COVID environment?
Well, this has been a source of enormous argument in the US between various very angry and cross groups of people, consultancy firms, GBTA, HRS, Booking.com. Everybody has got involved in this conversation. GBTA put out a statement 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago recommending that all hotel programs for 2020 be rolled over into 2021 to avoid the need to run hotel RFP processes. And this has produced an enormous amount of protest, mainly from people that do hotel RFP processes. However, the long and short of it is this: you will not need your whole hotel program when you come back. You simply won't. And this goes back to that conversation about understanding which part of your business is going to come back first. And once you have an understanding of where you think your return is going to come, that will allow you to focus on the hotels that you will really, really need. And I would suggest that rather than renegotiate RFPs across hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of properties, identify your primary chains, negotiate your discounts on the chains, identify your key and most important hotels in your top 10 cities, and focus on having the right deals in those key properties. You know, the old 80-20 rule: address 80% of your demand as fast as you can. So that would be my advice to you: is rather than run an entire hotel RFP, is to focus on where your need is. And I would have a fairly straightforward conversation with your hotel suppliers about cleaning standards and separation standards in the properties as well. Make sure, because this was not really a function of the RFP process prior to COVID, so make sure that you have asked the same questions to all of your hotel suppliers about how often are the rooms cleaned, what's the check-in methodology, is there a way to check into the room without interacting with reception? Hilton, for example, have a key on the phone. Are there, you know, find out from them what they're doing. And this is as important with the independent properties as it is with the chains. Spain is a market with some fabulous independent hotels in them. I've stayed in a few. There's a hotel in Madrid called the Artem, which I particularly like. There's a few, but make sure that the independents give you that perspective as much as the chain. So check your standards. And then the final piece about it is to communicate with your travelers about what they are most concerned about staying in a hotel. So get feedback from them before they travel, so you can address their concerns in a proactive way.
Okay, thank you. There are two more questions. This new post-COVID scenario is teaching us that there is a different and effective way for running our business via online meetings. If you consider that all companies are going through economic difficulties, don't you think that the ROI of business travel will go down dramatically and the companies will see business travel more than a cost where they can make savings instead?
Yes, I think in general principle, I would agree with that in the short term. Most of the companies that we're working with have stopped international travel at least until the third quarter, if not to the end of the year. There are some businesses that will be exceptions to that. Pharmaceutical businesses will need to travel. Some government businesses will need to travel. Military businesses will need to travel. There's going to be businesses that have to travel. But you take a customer of mine, Universal Music. They're not traveling internationally until the end of the year. Another customer, Vodafone, are not traveling until the end of the year. So I think there will be, in the short term, there will be a lot of travel freezes while people cautiously wait to see which way this is going to go, except in those businesses that do need to travel, right? So I think that's a fair point. From an internal meetings perspective, I wholeheartedly agree that there will be a significant amount of internal meetings that stay online. They don't come back to being in person. I worked for years for BCD Travel, and once a month, every month, I would have to fly to Utrecht in Holland for 3 days to be shouted at about my budget. Oscar remembers these meetings very well. And that kind of meeting could entirely be done online. And I think there will be many examples of that will exist. So yes, I would expect a lot of internal meetings to remain online. And don't forget that travel is going to become much more time consuming and expensive now. So we also have to, you know, this habit we have of everybody flying to one place for 1 day to do an internal meeting about something, that habit has to change, because it will no longer be possible to do these commuter type quick journeys, and it will be expensive. So I think we have to be realistic about that too.
Okay, thank you. The last one, how do you see the future of business models based on credit? Suppliers providing credit to agencies prepaying for the corporate customers and getting the commissions fees weeks later. How will the new reality affect these models and companies?
Dramatically, and I think especially for the TMCs who are not cash rich anyway, and have this very awkward relationship with IATA, where they have to pay BSP on a certain level time for the flights. and then they collect the money from the customers sometime later. I think that the TMCs will struggle with this. You may still see good credit relationships with the hotels themselves directly. I know there's a lot of hotel build-back business in Spain, and I think you will still see good relationships with the properties, but the TMCs, I think, will struggle, and this will be reflected also in the meetings business. I know that in a lot of the meetings business pre-COVID in the Spanish market, you would book your meeting, the TMC would take care of the deposit, the prepayment, then they would invoice you at a later stage. I think some of them are going to really be struggling to have the cash resources to do that. Virtual payment was already coming anyway into the marketplace. So I would expect there to be a rise in the use of virtual payment, and in particular corporate lodge for certain kinds of business. Interestingly, one of the companies that's done very well through COVID is American Express Card. We've had a fairly good COVID, I mean, not amazing, but better than most. And they are, I think, very actively now looking at ramping up how they bring these services into marketplaces, because the ability to function on credit will not be the same as it was before. An enormous amount of cash has been sucked out of our economies, and most of our governments have had to borrow huge amounts of money. So the banks are also going to be much less willing to extend certain kinds of credit than they were. So it's a great question, and definitely one to think about. The way to handle it is to look at it and say, what business do I do today that's on credit? Where is that business? Where is that credit business with someone who does not have physical assets to support the financial loan? So TMCs do not have physical assets to support financial loans. Hotels do. And where there are physical assets to support the credit position, then I think you will probably still be able to get the credit. Where there are not physical assets, I think the credit will be harder to get.
Okay, thank you. There's no more questions. So for us, I mean, we can finish. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. It was a great pleasure again to see you and to have a chat and spend this webinar with us. We really appreciate it. We know you have family commitments and you make a room for us, and really, really appreciate that. Thank you, Chris. I hope you see you in Spain soon, and to having a bottle of wine and have a meal together.
Yes, I can't wait to see you guys again. Oscar, thank you so much for the invitation today. I really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Thank you very much.
Safe. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Just
Don't forget.
Finish, yes.
Yeah, next week.
Next week, exactly. Just go ahead, Natalia.
Yes, well, don't forget, next week we have a special session of aviation. So we hope you can join us on Thursday, 21st.
Thank you, everybody, and see you next week. Bye-bye.